What is going on, everybody? Man, hope you guys are all doing well out there. Listen, we got some things to talk about. Man. As far as the camera world is concerned, there have been some releases that, are drawing quite a bit of people's attention. Maybe you've seen the news, maybe you haven't, but Canon not too long ago just recently dropped the new Canon R5 and R6. The R5 being a camera that records in 8K. Whoa, 8K, little camera, little mirrorless camera that records in 8K. Mind blowing, right? It also too, it's a great photography camera as well. I should have been prepared for this, but I wanted to pull up some of the other specs as well. But listen, that's innovative, right? That's mind-boggling that they're able to place an 8K camera inside of a little mirrorless body. You know, the only other 8K camera that I can think of is the Red. And that's a $60,000 camera. So here we have this little camera. Let's type this in, Canon R5 specs. So here we have this little Canon R5 that can shoot 8K. Man, that's crazy. Phenomenal, right? Or is it? Is there more to it? Let's take a look over here real quick, and let's just go ahead and look at some of the specs. We see that, look at that. Okay, so about $4,000. The EOS R5 digital camera body. Showing some examples. 45 effective megapixels. 45 megapixel camera. That's crazy. Got some great ISO range, high speed. Look at these image quality, just phenomenal. Some phenomenal specs. But I think what's biggest is the 8K, and not just 8K, but 8K RAW. They're showing you here that you can record RAW, which for those of you that don't know, basically it's a way to preserve the image quality, and it's a way to make sure that all of that no compression is being done, which means you're not losing any of that valuable information that you may want to pull back in post. So 8K RAW. That's crazy, man. That's crazy. That's amazing, right? Isn't it? Or is it? Okay, so here's the news. Here's what's really going on. Is they're having an issue with this particular camera. And here's the issue right here. Boom. Let me just show you this. Here's the issue. Overheating during video recording. Now, Canon actually dropped this little graph, and you can't really see it. It's really hard to see, but basically in there, it's telling you that you got about 20 to 30 minutes before the thing starts overheating. So you got about 20 to 30 minutes. They know it's going to overheat. And you got about 20 to 30 minutes recording in 8K before it starts overheating. And then you got to dip out of there for about a couple minutes to let it cool down. And everybody's going crazy about this, right? They're like, man, overheating, what's the big deal, right? And it's true. Like, why are you going to create a camera that is for, let's just say, prosumer, right? Kind of entry level, professional consumer, but yet it stops recording? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Now, Sony not too long ago had an issue with this with their A7 series, and it kept on overheating, and everybody just went crazy about it because you're in the middle of a shoot, you're trying to record, and the thing just drops out because it's overheating. Now, Canon has released several different statements, press releases, basically saying, look, man, it's a lot of stuff in there. You know what I mean? Like, we couldn't fit a fan in there because we didn't want the body not to be weather sealed, which is, closing it up so it's protected within the elements. You stick a fan in there and all of a sudden now you can't use it in the environment, right? Can't use it in the elements. So they're like, look, man, it's a lot of stuff going on. And, we couldn't put a fan in there. It's too small. We wanted to keep it light, all these things. And so, we knew it's going to overheat, but we did it anyways. Okay, so let's just kind of address that really quickly, right? So 8K, but you can only use it for 20 minutes. Listen, what's the point of that? Canon basically did what Canon does a lot of times, and they're known as for crippling a lot of their features. They'll release 4K, but it's cropped. They'll add all these features in there, but there's usually some sort of limitation. And once again, we see it with the R5, dropping this limitation where you have an issue recording and it starts overheating. Come on, bro. We can't do that. We can't use that. Like, why did you really even need to put 8K in there to begin with? You really didn't, man. You really didn't. You're trying to pull a sucker punch, man. You're trying to, come on, man. You know what you were doing, Canon. You were trying to be the first, because that's what they're marketing it as, the first camera to record 8K. The first camera of this style to record 8K. Wow, you did it. But you really didn't, man. It's a huge fail. 45 megapixels, that's cool. That's what's up. The Sony cameras are already doing that, so it's not really that big of a deal. The A7R4s and stuff, not really that big of a deal, but hey, that's cool. But listen, man, why are you going to do that? So no, what kind of prompted me to make this video was, my boy, man, Caravan Film Cruise on Instagram dropped the video, and he was basically saying why he's not going to be purchasing this camera or another camera. And I'm going to show you this because it doesn't stop with Canon's R5. It actually goes one step further. So about a week later, then we get this other release, this other announcement. Let me show you this. Boom. Blackmagic unveils 80 megapixel camera that can shoot 12K raw video at 60 frames per second. 12K raw video at 60 frames per second. Now, just to kind of give you guys, maybe those of you who are not very familiar or not as familiar with, cameras and stuff like that, like the whole raw aspect is a new aspect for consumer prosumer cameras. Basically, it's the idea that you're able to get a file that is uncompressed, so that you can have the latitude and the flexibility to kind of move it around and do different things. Now, one thing I didn't mention about the R5 is that another issue that they're not talking about is the extremely large bloated file sizes that Canon is notorious for having. So yes, you can shoot 8K, but good luck trying to edit that. Good luck trying to save that footage, because you're going to need 2 terabyte hard drive just to save one project. Like, the file sizes are ginormous. It's incredibly difficult. I don't even know what kind of computer you could even probably edit that on. So once again, what good is it to have 8K where you can't even move around the files, and you can't even, it keeps on overheating, keep on having all these issues, right? Like, what are y'all doing? What are y'all doing? Don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. So let's go here to Blackmagic. Now, I will say this, Blackmagic has their own version of RAW, and their version of RAW is extremely lightweight as far in comparison to a lot of other aspects of RAW. So it is a little bit more flexible. You will probably be able to use even the 12K in DaVinci Resolve, which is their editing suite, which is highly recommended, by the way. I'm going to be doing a video coming up on, Final Cut Pro 10 versus DaVinci Resolve versus Premiere, which you should use and why you should use it. So that's coming up. But look at this, man. So 12K RAW. Okay, now once again, let me ask you this question. Do we even need that? Do we even need that? Who in the world needs 12K RAW? Like, big Hollywood films aren't even being shot on 12K RAW. That's just mind-blowing. Once again, I feel like another sucker punch. Do we need it? People are saying, you don't even have a 12K screen to watch it on. So, okay, I digress on that. But I wanted to bring that up. Now, there's one other camera that is coming out, which I believe is actually probably the best deal and the best camera out of all of these new announcements. And that camera is the new Sony A7S III, coming out July 28th. Okay. And we see here that it has 12 megapixel image sensor. Now, for photography, whack, it's not really going to do it. But for video, what it does is it actually allows you to get better low light images. And so if you're shooting video, then yeah, you definitely, that's fine. 12 megapixels, no big deal. Okay. So it's got a stacked new sensor that they're implementing, this new sensor that they're putting in there, 16-bit raw output. Okay. That's good. See, now we're talking about what quality of raw. Now, here's what you need to understand, and it gets all technical, and you could spend a lot of time geeking out over this stuff, which I do, but the bit rate is the amount of information that is coming across from the sensor. So the Sony, let's say the Sony a7 III, it shoots 8-bit. The the Panasonic GH5 shoots 10-bit. And then if you want to do slow motion, you can put an Atomos recorder in there, and you can do 10-bit 60 frames, okay, which is considered slow motion. So the idea is you really want to pay attention to the bit rate, because that's going to give you the real quality and flexibility of that image, because there's more information in basically the greater number of bit rates. So 16-bit is actually really, really high. That's a really high quality. Like, you can do professional green screen work with that. You can push those colors around. Have you ever noticed, for example, like, your you shoot something maybe in 8-bit, and then you try to go put a LUT on it, or you try to move the colors around a little bit, and all of a sudden you start getting those little blotchy things, and it starts really just getting really muddy and ugly. That's because the bit rate is not strong enough to be able to handle whatever colors you're trying to put on there. So 16-bit is actually really, really good, man. That's really good. A claim 15 stops the dynamic range. Now, this is another thing that we need to pay attention to. We need to pay attention to the dynamic range. Instead of Canon's R5 doing 8K, all this wonderful stuff, 45 megapixels, man, let's talk about the dynamic range. Because to filmmakers and to whoever's trying to create the best image, you need to have dynamic range. And basically what that is it's the variables between the lightest and the darkest. And they measure those in stops. So each stop creates another level of variance between the highlights and the shadows, which gives you more of an image. There's certain aspects that are not blown out, right? So you can shoot one image, and it's going to have shadows and it's going to have highlights. And the level between each of those having detail in them is going to be the dynamic range. So it's a very, very important factor for filmmaking. You want to have as much dynamic range as possible. And I think that, ARRI, which is like the filmmakers, like that's like the golden standard of filmmaking, ARRI Alexa, ARRI Mini, these things, I think they're right around 16. So that's a crazy amount of dynamic range for this little camera. Okay, 15 stops the dynamic range, which should be possible with 16-bit RAW once again. So now we have the dynamic range, the roll off, the difference, the variation between the highs and the lows. And then we also have 16-bit RAW. Okay, now to the average person, that doesn't sound very exciting at all. And while it's not crazy exciting, it is very interesting. And we'll keep on going here. Okay, so then we got 1080, 240, which whatever, 10-bit 422. Okay, not bad. At 4K, 10-bit 422. Once again, 422 is the color space. What you want to pay attention to is the bit rate, 10-bit, and then, of course, the high frame rate, 120 frames, which is super slow motion. So super cool. Then you can go 4K 120 RAW over HDMI, which is like an Atomos internal recorder. 600 megabytes is per second is the bit rate. That's really, really high. Chances are it's going to create some ultra big file sizes, but if you need it and you're shooting something that calls for it, you have it and it's there. And then it's going to have, of course, the A7 cameras are known for having incredibly, incredibly powerfully strong low light. You can basically like shoot in the dark with those things. It's crazy. So once again, here's the thing. Out of all three cameras that were announced, I would say that the Sony a7S III is by far the best deal and the best camera, even over the 8K and the 12K. I think that what they're simply doing, man, is they're just simply giving a sticker shock, right? 8K, wow, I shoot 8K, I shoot 12K. First of all, if you're actually shooting that, you're going to have a really hard time with those file sizes. You're going to have a really difficult time. And most people, check this out, even people with like the Pocket 6K cameras and some of the other Red 6K cameras, a lot of them shoot 4K anyways. Because first of all, the person that you're delivering it to is never going to know, oh, that was 8K. wow, that looked like 8. You're not going to be able to tell the difference, especially if you're watching it on a screen or on a monitor or something like that. You're not going to be able to tell. So it's honestly it's just sticker shock. It's just something that catches people up and they go, oh, I got to have the best thing, 8K, 12K. Listen, you don't need that. You don't need that. You don't need none of that. 4K is still good enough. Most projects are still delivered in 1080. And most people can't even tell the difference between 1080 and 4K. So what are you even doing? Like, what does that even matter? So it's a bunch of hype, in my opinion. It's a bunch of just shock. You know, people are trying to shock people. Oh, with this, what do you really need? You know what you really need? You really need just this, a phone. I mean, for most cases, right? If not, $1,000 DSLR or mirrorless camera will get you into game shooting some super high quality images. 4K, if you can shoot 4K, which is a standard, one of the cameras that I recommend the most is and I'm going to pull it up here so you guys can see it, is a Panasonic G7. Panasonic G7. If you want to do filmmaking, this camera right here is crazy. Let me go to images here so that you can see it. All right, boom. Panasonic G7. It is what you call a micro 4/3 camera. Okay, so that's referring to the sensor. This price is, you could actually find it. So you can find it for about $500. You can find it used for about $300. I've found it used multiple different times for $300. It's something that you could easily find. That camera right there is a super power cinema camera. I actually shot recently a couple of music videos with that camera to show people how dope that camera really is. That it's a crazy, like something like that. It shoots 4K. That's all you need. If you want to do filmmaking, if you want to do, let's say you wanted to do more YouTube type stuff, right? And you're like, oh man, you know, I want to do more YouTube, or I want to do more of that kind of content. Then boom, Canon M50, $600. Super good camera, super versatile, super well rounded. Another great one is the Sony A6400. This one actually does incredibly good video and photo. 24 megapixel camera. It's a little bit more. It's approaching that $1,000 mark. 800 you can find it used. Crazy good camera. What's really good about that camera is it has really powerful autofocus. So if you need to do some stuff like this, talking head, you can't really get into focus. You know, the G7 doesn't really do good autofocus and things like that. So it's more for, you know, handheld filmmaking type stuff. But boom, you don't need all of that stuff. You don't need 8K. You don't need 12K. You don't, in most cases, you don't even need 6K. You just don't need it. And so anyways, kind of wrapping this video up, I wanted to make this in a response to my boy Caravan Film Cruise on Instagram. Go follow him if you haven't. He drops a whole bunch of dope stuff. He shoots Blackmagic 4K, and he's a dope filmmaker. He's also a dope photographer as well. Does a lot of high-end fashion shoots and things like that. Super dope dude. That's my brother, man. We worked many jobs together, done a lot of stuff, continue to do stuff. That's my brother, man. But anyways, yeah, so he made a video talking about it. Like, man, what's the point with this Canon R5? I'm not buying it. What's up with this Blackmagic, you know, 12K cinema camera? You know, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying any of these. I don't think and then he did mention the A7S III, and this is kind of was the response to him, was he was saying basically, I'm not buying that either. It just looks like a glorified GH5. And my argument was, no, I don't. I own a GH5. I think one, it's got better bit depth. I think it's got better dynamic range. It's a full frame sensor. It's better in low light. And I think there's some other things that are yet to be seen with it, like overheating, battery, HDMI ports, some of the little small things that we kind of don't really look at first glance. But I think based on the specs that we see, the A7S III is the camera to go to. And I think also too, it's going to be cheaper. I think it'll probably be around $3,000 or $2,500 or something like, no, probably not 25, probably around the $3,000 mark. So super dope camera, not crazy exciting specs, but listen, you don't need all those specs, man. Don't get suckered into that. It's just hype, man. It's just marketing hype. Come on, take it from your local marketing guru. It's just marketing hype, man. They're just trying to sell you some stuff that you don't need. And once you try to use that stuff, let me just tell you, Once you try to use that stuff, man, it's going to get really, really difficult. And you're going to start to see your little time, they call it the little wheel of death or whatever. If you're on Final Cut or if you're on Adobe Premiere, you know what I mean? It's just going to be, man, you're going to have to create proxy files, which is another way to shrink the file sizes. And that's going to take a heck of a long time. It's just not even going to be worth it. You'll probably, if you get one of those cameras, you'll probably wind up just shooting 1080 or 4K anyways. Facts. Because it's too much work, man. It's too much work. If you've never done it before, let me just tell you, man, it's way too much work and it ain't worth it. So I don't know, man. Let me know. Are you in the market? Are you going to buy a camera? Are you in the beginning stages? Are you looking at just trying to get your feet wet, trying to get something to get going? Or are you looking to up your camera? Are you looking to just take it to the next level? Like, where are you at with your camera experience? Are you just shooting stuff on your phone, which actually is super dope? I made a video not too long ago about how to up your cell phone footage. It gives you some accessories and some tips on how to do that. Definitely check that video out on my YouTube. If you haven't already, man, please subscribe. Dropping more content like this, trying to help you guys up your level of content creation, help you up your level of what to do with that content creation when it comes to marketing it, give you some tips and some strategies and all this kind of stuff, and let you know what things to avoid, like this thing, man, like this 8K, 12K nonsense. So anyways, hope you guys are blessed, man. Be encouraged. Until next time, peace.